Okay. All right. Good evening, guys. Today we're gonna talk about scales. So all the previous sessions, whatever we had, was basically talking about chords. Then we were talking about degrees. Then we were talking about intervals, how to form chords, major chords, minor chords, etc., etc. So that's pretty much what we've been talking about in the last few sessions. So if you by any chance haven't had an opportunity to attend the session, then make sure you check the video on the channel, and that'll give you a heads up on what's been covered in the previous session. So in this session, we're going to talk about scales. So what are scales? So if you think about scales, scales are the building blocks for the song. So any song you take is, hold on, I'm adding somebody. Yeah, so any song you take, basically the notes which you use in those songs are from a scale. So scale, imagine scale as an underlying structure on which the songs are built. So you basically take the notes from the scale and you arrange them, rearrange them to come up with a melody. All right, so that's a very rough way of saying what are scales. So we're going to look more detailed into what exactly are scales and how to form them to begin with. So basically, scales are organized sequence of notes. So we are saying organized sequence of notes. So it is going to be like one after the other. So the one which we are familiar of is the C scale, which almost everybody would have come across. So you start with C and you basically end with C. So that's something which we use as a beginner, which is like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. Now that's a C scale. So scale is basically sequence of notes, and it is organized. Now this organized is what we're going to talk about. So the reason why we call it as organized is because not any random set of notes arranged back and forth can become a scale. So we'll get there. So first is it's organized sequence of notes, and it is set of tones from which you can build melodies and harmonies. So that line speaks for itself. So you build your melody and harmony, in this case, your accompaniment and all your chords, etc., based out of the scale, right? So the next thing is how do you actually build it? So if you look at it, you have to arrange these notes in a specific order and in a specific distance. So this is the most important point, the specific order and distance. So distance between the notes makes a lot of gives you a lot of information. So this arrangement of notes in a specific distance obviously will involve your degrees and intervals, which we talked about in the previous session. So if you are clear about the degrees and intervals, this will not be of much of a issue for you. So we are basically going to arrange these notes in a specific order, in a specific distance, and that's going to give us the scale. All right. So what we know till this point is degrees are relatively the placeholder which we have, and intervals are the distance between these placeholders. That's something which we talked about in the previous sessions. So let's look at the next. So when you talk about intervals, you are talking about, oh God, 1 second, hold on. How do I go back? Oh, what happened? So we're talking about scales here, and yeah, so scales, obviously we are going to use intervals and degrees. So intervals, we already know that semitone is the smallest possible distance which you can have. So basically moving from one fret to the other, and tone is basically two semitones makes up a tone, right? Now this is also important because with this only we're going to build up the scales. And in other words, putting up the semitone and tone, we can say it as half step and full step. So how we are going to do it? So let's start with one of the most easiest and the most basic scale which you can come across, something called chromatic scale. So chromatic means it's going to be next to next. So it's going to be the adjacent. So you start from a note, and if you look at it, you see the blue box here on the left. Let's assume that that's a note, and the blue box on the right is the same note repeating again. Now if you look at it, you will basically have 12 boxes, all in equal distance. That's pretty much like you playing each and every white key and black key adjacent like in a sequence, or you playing all the fret in sequence, like first fret, second fret, third fret, fourth fret, fifth fret, like that. So chromatic scale is something which moves every half step, right, or every semitone, like how we were talking about semitone. So chromatic scale is a scale which you can build by means of simply using semitones only. So any semitone distance you keep playing a note, that is going to come as chromatic scale. Now remember, when it is a scale, it has to start and it has to end in the same note. So let's assume that you're starting at G, then you keep going G, G sharp, and then A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and G, back to G. So you have to finish in G, all right? So now the chromatic scale is the most easiest. Why? Because it doesn't have any complication. It is just half step. You start somewhere, you keep adding half semitone, semitone, and you get to the end of the note and you get the chromatic scale. Now the most used ones are the major scales and the minor scales. Now we're going to talk about only major scale in this session because it might take quite some time for us, like how we did chords. We need to explore into each and every type of scales which we have. I'll give you an overview of what are the type of scales at the end. But to begin with, we're going to talk on a rough outline the major scale and the minor scale now. So the major scale, if you look at it, you see that there is a can you guys see my, I don't know what that is. Can you guys see my cursor? If so, can you just raise your hand on the chat? Yeah, can you guys see the red? Oh yeah, perfect. All right, actually I said yes. Okay, thank you guys. So if you look at this is a major scale arrangement which you're looking at on the screen. So again, we are seeing boxes, and let's assume that these boxes are notes. You start with the first box. Let's assume that this is C. Now C, and then D, and then E, F, G, A, B, and C. Now, if you look at it, you can easily identify that the distance between these two notes are larger. This is again larger, but this is very short. Then again large, again large, again large, and short again. Well, that's the arrangement for major scale. So what in technical terms it is the distance between the first degree, because it's the first note in the scale, and the second degree is a tone. Then from this, the second degree to the third degree is again a tone. So you should be knowing that tone comprises of two semitones, right? So this is basically two semitone distance. This is basically two semitone distance. Then it is just one semitone, then two again, two again, two again, and one. Now look at the minor scale. In visual terms, it does make quite a lot of difference. If you see it, major scale is literally like lengthy. And I can assure you that all this distance are like matched with the length of the all these distances are like equally calculated. So you look at the major scale, it's sort of bigger, and minor scale is sort of falling short. And also look at the arrangement here. The first degree to second degree is like two semitones, so basically a tone. But the second to third is a semitone, and then third to fourth is a tone, fourth to fifth is a tone, then semitone, then a tone. So this has an entirely different arrangement altogether. But forget about minor scale as of now. Let's focus on the major scale alone. So major scale, like I was talking about earlier, the distance between the degrees. So degrees are the notes which you're going to use. So in this case, if it is C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, and the distance at which these notes has to be is mentioned in terms of tone, tone, semitone. So C to D has to be in a tone distance, D to E has to be in a tone distance, E to F has to be in a semitone distance, F to G has to be in a tone, G to A has to be in a tone, and A to B has to be in a tone, and B to C has to be in a semitone. So this, which you see here, T, T, S, T, 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 S, T, which most of you guys would have heard by now if you would have attended the previous session, is nothing but the major scale structure. Remember the first slide which we talked about? Its arrangement in a specific manner. So it basically has specific order. This is the order we are talking about. So the order is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So any major scale you take and you try to calculate the distance between the notes, you will always end up with this structure, which is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. This is the structure for a major scale. Just to quickly look at minor scale, we will talk about this later, but just to give you an idea, The minor scale has a structure of tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, and whatever. So this is entirely different from what we have on a major scale, right? So let me just turn off the spotlight. Oh, it does work that way. That's nice. Okay. So what I talked about is what you have. So you have the degrees written here and the distance. Now, when you calculate the distance, you're not going to start like from the first degree to second degree, then from the first degree. No, it's not from the first to third. It's just keep counting from degree to degree. So calculate first degree to second degree, it has to be a tone. Second degree to third degree, it has to be a tone. Third to fourth, it has to be a semitone. So you got to count it that ways. All right. So this is about the major scale arrangement. It's pretty simple. There is nothing much to get complicated as such with this one. But if you guys have any doubts, you can always come back to the slide. So I'm going to share this link with you in the Google Classroom. You can make use of that and look at the slides and get it clarified. I'm going to talk about the last one, which is the types of scales which we have. We actually talked about the major scale here. And then there are minor scales. Now in minor scale, there are quite some variety. There is natural, melodic, and harmonic. And then there is something called blues scale, pentatonic scale, and chromatic scale is what we saw on the outline. So chromatic scale is pretty straightforward. It's exactly like how we talked about, just semitone, and then keep adding semitone, semitone distance every single degree, and you're there. That's the chromatic scale. So we don't have much to learn in chromatic scale, but the rest of the minor scale and blues scale and pentatonic, we will see in the forthcoming sessions, and we'll try to understand what exactly are their structure. All right. So now question time. Anybody has any questions, you can ask me. I'm giving permission for everybody to unmute. So make sure you unmute your microphone and talk.
Sir, I have a question. This is Akshita.
Yes, Akshita.
So it's natural. Okay. No question, sir. I didn't read the.
Sorry, Akshita, I couldn't hear you.
No, sir, I don't have a doubt.
Okay, all right. So one thing which I would like to inform you guys is that what the reason why I took C scale is because by default is a natural major scale. You don't need to do any sort of adjustment whatsoever in order to get that scale working. Others who are not talking, kindly mute the microphone, please. Yes. Yes. Who's this? Aushidan. Yes, man, it's a little far, man. Can you just talk a bit loud? Yeah.
These scales are still only the basic scales, right? The ones that you just mentioned, pentatonic, chromatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like much more than pentatonic, chromatic, major.
No. See, these are the main what do you call the main majorly used, predominantly used scales which we have right now.
I'm talking about like rarely used is also there, but we're not learning it, right?
Yes, we are not learning right now. We'll get this first, then we'll get there. Yeah. Anyone else? Question?
So if we're starting from Sriram Dashanu here, if we're starting from C and we follow this pattern, we call it a C major scale.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you want to figure out another scale, let's say, for example, you want to find a G scale, you start with G and then you basically lay out this tone, semitone structure. So write it down on the paper. Now from G to the next degree is A, right? See whether it has two semitones. If so, then tone, you put a tick. Then A to B, see if it has a tone, select it. Now, if you come across a place where it is tone, but you need to do a semitone, you need a semitone, then that's where you involve something called sharps and flats, right? So that's something which we will talk about in the next session. So people who knew how to deal with sharps and flats can actually go ahead with the exercise which I've given in the link, which the Google Forms link, where you can basically go and fill up the scales. But people who don't know how to form it, it's fine. In the next session, we will talk about how to deal with sharps and flats, and we'll probably do a couple of exercises to get it going. But try to understand the concept first, that all these scales basically have an underlying structure, and the major scale structure is mainly this tone, semitone, tone, semitone. Anyone else? Question?
Sorry, one more question. So,
Yes.
can it start from a sharp or always
Yes,
start?
yes. You can start from anywhere. So all the 12, all the 11 notes which you have, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, etc., everything has its own scale. So you can start anywhere. It doesn't matter sharp or flat. All you need to do is strictly follow the distance and you're there. Simple.
Okay. And we can also take from any, like we have many C's, right? It needs to be like a middle C or anything of that sort.
Nothing like that. You can start with any C and do. See, what you're trying to achieve with forming a scale is you're going to figure out what distance these notes have to be. Where you're going to play all those notes together, it's up to you. You can play it in the lower octave, you can play it in the higher octave. It really doesn't matter.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Or is there somebody who didn't understand it right from the beginning? If so, do let me know. Okay, looks like everyone is clear. All right, so then that's it for today's session. So I just wanted to give you guys an introduction on scales. So remember that, let me just do a brush up. So scales are basically organized sequence of notes. There are a couple of people who were there for the first few minutes. So here you go. So organized sequence of notes, it's basically set of tones by which you can actually build your melodies and chords. So you take notes from these scales and you try to build your melody and use only those notes. So don't use any note which is not outside. Don't use any note which is outside the scale. And wow, what is that? Okay, I have a yellow line. I don't know why. Anyways, so arrangement of notes in specific order, and it involves degrees and intervals, of course, because that's how we build our scale. So what you guys would have done in terms of forming chords is you would have actually taken the C scale or any scale, whichever you're using, and you would have used the first degree, third degree, and fifth degree. So you were unknowingly using the scale all this while when we were trying to form a chord. Probably a little bit later, you will understand it better on how to use scales and chords in relation to it much better. All right. So last call, any questions whatsoever?
Sir, Uma here.
Yes, Uma.
So could you just elaborate on blues scale and pentatonic scale? What are they?
Well, yeah, as of now in this session we are not going to focus on that, but we are going to have special sessions for blues scales, pentatonic, and etc. So we will come to that. So blues scale is a little it's basically, it'll have like penta will have like 5 notes and blues scale will have like 7 notes. So we will come across all that soon. So as of now, just make a note of it and try to do research on your own. When you have a session, it might be better for you to understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. Meghna
Yes,
here.
Meghna.
Sir, a sharp is basically a black key after a particular note, right?
Yeah, you can say it like that. A flat is also a black key, but then it will be before the note. So if, for example, we say B flat, B is the note which you play. The flat would be the black key which is before that B. So that's the B flat. And sharp would be, if you take A sharp would be the black key which is next to A.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, one question.
Yes, ma.
This is Akshita. Wait, all the sharps and flats don't necessarily have to be black keys, right? For example, if you have C flat, that is not a black key.
Correct.
So-
Correct. So basically, we have something called enharmonic equivalent, which says the two notes will actually share the same key in terms of playing practical. There is a slight difference between your theory and your practice. So let's take the keyboard as an example, or even guitar. You play C and then you play D. In between you have a fret, or in between you have a black key. Now, if you want to play C sharp, you would be playing the next fret to C. In keyboard, you will be playing the black key, which is next to C. All right. The same way, when you're playing D flat, you will be playing the same second fret on the C, on the guitar, and the same same black key on the keyboard also, which is for D flat, the key which is before D. So C sharp and D flat are technically the same frequency. That's why it's called enharmonic equivalent. The same way, it doesn't really matter that whether it is falling on a black key or a white key. All you need to think about is to see whether it is falling on the next note. So even if you look at the keyboard layout, you will see the white key will not be full. It will always have this little cutting where the black key is in place, which is technically indicating that it is coming next to the white key. So if you start from C, the next key from C is not D, it is actually C sharp. Then that C sharp and the D key would be like little, closer to that black key. You will see that groove there. So adjacent key or the next key will always be the sharp and the previous key will always be the flat. You can keep it like that. And yes, black key doesn't need to be like sharp or flat necessarily. Like C flat is white technically.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
Sriram, can you just show me the major scales one more time? I just want to like tone,
Okay.
tone, semitone.
Yeah, there you go. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Do you guys see this yellow line, yellow drawing on top?
Yes.
Oh God, I don't know how it
Yes.
came. Oh, there. Awesome. Yes. All right. Any other questions? Oh, what is that? 3 chat. Okay, somebody's sending this. Okay. All right. Looks like that's about it. I don't think anybody has any
Sir.
other. Oh yes, yes. Who's this?
Vinitra here.
Yes, Vinitra.
There are flats and sharps in guitars also, right?
Yes, correct.
How do we find those in guitar?
So, which string are you in now? First, second, third. Did you cover all the 6 strings?
I pass lightly row.
Okay, you cross lightly row. Then you are familiar with the first string and the second string. So let's say you're playing F, right? In that first string, the first fret you play F, correct?
Okay.
The first string, you press the first fret, it is F, and then you will use the third finger on the third fret to play G, correct?
Yeah.
The space
Yeah.
in between is something which you don't touch at all, right? That's where you have your sharp and flat. So F sharp is the second fret which you're talking about, and G flat is again the same second fret which you're talking about. So the in-between frets which you keep ignoring are the sharps and flats. You understood?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
Sir, if you say, Meghna here,
Yes, Meghna.
if you say the C flat is the white key before C note,
Mm-hmm.
then isn't it technically B?
Well, it's little complex. See, that's why, at the beginning, we never say it like, we have C flat and we have F flat and all, because it's just a little hard to interpret. The way you use your degrees matter. So how it is in relation with your scale. So if you're saying F flat, or let's say C flat itself, it depends on what scale you are in. If you're talking about some other scale where you can't have B, again based out of degrees, then you can't really call it as B. You have to call it as C flat only. You getting it?
Okay.
Yeah, it changes based on the scale. We'll get there, but don't confuse yourself with the C flats and F flats. Yeah, everyone, don't confuse yourself with C flat and F flat. It's little advanced in a different way. We'll get there. But as of now, imagine we don't have C flat and F flats. We just have the standard ones. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. You spoke about this in your previous class also. You told us that depending upon what chord we have to play, we have to say it accordingly. For example, if you are playing some chord which requires C flat, which has the B note, but then you're supposed to say C flat. So you explained it in your previous class, sir.
Ah, yes, indeed. Good. Yes. So that's technically what I'm talking about even here also. So what you need to call at which place matters a lot. So that is something you need to figure out. If you don't do that, then you might end up saying the wrong notes and it'll not match with what you need. So yeah. Good. Anyone else? Okay, cool. All right, so that's it, guys. That's it for today. Thanks a lot for joining in. And if you have any doubts whatsoever at any point, do feel free to reach out to me on WhatsApp. And this session will be available on YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe to it and look at it just in case you have any doubts. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Until next session. Bye bye. Take care. Be safe.